Recent acts of gun violence in Boston have prompted a new effort to keep the peace. Part of that was a meeting at Muhammad's Mosque in Grove Hall and some training from the founder of 10,000 Peacemakers, Captain Dennis Muhammad. To tell us about the campaign are a minister from the mosque, Randy Muhammad, and community outreach agent, Clifton Braithwaite. Thank you, Bill, for being with us.
Thank you, Chris, once again.
I will start with Clifton.
Yes, sir.
To put this into context here, this meeting took place after some cases of violence in Boston.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about those and why people were so concerned.
In our community, what's going on, there's a lot of unnecessary violence. And us being peacemakers in the community have been working separate. So when Minister Randy Moss gave us the call for the 10,000 Peacemakers, to me it was a no-brainer to get involved. And collectively with great numbers, we can make a difference. Now, the Peacemakers is not about walking around and telling people, don't do this. We just want to give them encouraging words and just be occupying the community or the block that was in trouble. But what is beautiful about the 10,000 Peacemakers, the Mosque has proven when they get involved in our community, things do change. And we need that great beacon. We need the minister, we need Minister Farrakhan, we need his soldiers to bring back and save our community. So for me and the people that I work with, it was a no-brainer. We were going to get involved and we're fully in.
Mr., what were your feelings when you heard about some of these cases? I know some of these were in Mattapan. One of them, there was a woman, Eleanor Maloney, a retired worker from Boston Medical Center. What were you thinking when you heard about things like this?
You know, I was very disappointed. You know, I got the call from the director of the Men of Muhammad Mosque number 11, who happened to be driving by and happened to come upon the scene. And he gave me a call that there was initially the report was a quadruple shooting. Turned out to be 3 people that were shot. So I went down to the scene to be there and to be present with the family and to offer our condolences and really, you know, my minister and mentor, Minister Don Muhammad, he used to always tell the men of the Nation of Islam, the fruit of Islam, whenever there was a murder that took place in the street, he would come before us and say, I charge you with murder. He would charge us with murder. And he would say, because had we worked a little bit harder, we might have reached the individual before they pulled the trigger. And so that's something that was ringing in my head as I was at the crime scene, that we have to do a better job going out in the community and trying to turn our people around before they get involved in these acts of violence.
Question, it's just overwhelming because you get victims like Eleanor, who was a bystander,
Right.
but sometimes the people pulling the triggers, they're not total strangers either.
You know, what it is, with years of abuse in our community, homelessness, drug addiction, we can go on and go on. We just don't, the young people and people of my age just don't know how to solve a problem without it having to be a fight. And that's what's the beauty about the Peacemakers. We're not going to change anybody's mind. We're just going to speak to them, give them encouragement. And we've done this on our own, through music, through arts and culture, and it's time. The women of our community need us. They've been holding down the front for a very long time, raising us, getting us ready for school, teaching us how to be parents. The list goes on. But if the men of our community, if we don't step up and speak out, then this is going to continuously go on. And when's enough going to be enough? When it happens to your mother, when it happens to your father, when it happens to your son. So all we're saying to the men in our community, we need you to come on out, join us, and be a part of this movement.
That's right.
It only makes sense.
Mr. Randy, in this show, we see it quite often, great leadership from women in this city
Right.
around overcoming violence, preventing violence. What is it that men can do?
Well, the men can do a lot because a lot of the violence is taking place by the men. And so a lot of times what the men who have changed their lives and are living positive lives, and this is who we're calling on to come and join the 10,000 Fearless Peacemakers. This is a group that we're forming across denominational, organizational lines. It doesn't matter what your religion is or what group you're a part of. We are all concerned with the violence, and so we want to call on the men, starting with the men, primarily because other men need to see positive examples. And there's a certain energy when men speak to men. And so when we show up on a block, maybe 50 of us, united, 50 strong men who are positive role models, show up on any block and engage the men of that community. For one, it's an example to the men of what they can be doing. And we want to encourage them to be peacemakers and to step up to our responsibility to make our communities safe and decent places to live. In 1995, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, at the height of gang violence in America, the height of Bloods and Crips and a lot of things that was going on in the early 90s, at the height of the crack epidemic and the ravages that brought on black communities, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan called for a 1 Million Man March. He called on the men to atone, reconcile, and take responsibility for their communities. And so men responded, and we gathered 1.8 million black men that came together in the mall in Washington, D.C. But the 1 Million Man March wasn't us marching in Washington, D.C. The real march was us marching back to our communities and making them safe and decent places to live. The facts speak for themselves. After the 1 Million Man March, violence in every major city went down. Matter of fact, Boston was the city where the murder rate among young people was the lowest in the entire country. And the president at that time, Bill Clinton, had to come to Boston and acknowledge that the murder rate among young people dropped, and he commended Boston. And in every major city, the violence dropped. In New York, it dropped. In LA, it dropped. And various people try to take credit for it. Whoever was the mayor in certain cities, I think Giuliani was the mayor in New York, and he became known as the people's mayor, and he took credit for reducing violence. And I think Commissioner Bill Branton was in LA, and he became a big cop and known for stopping violence. And there was various organizations even here in Boston that popped up wanting to take credit for the reduction in violence in Boston. But the truth of the matter is that it was the spirit of the 1 Million Man March and the men who went to D.C., who came back to their communities and made a difference. So when we're calling for 10,000 fearless peacemakers, we know that in 95, that Boston sent 10,000 men to Washington, D.C. to be a part of that. And that's how we had the reduction in the violence. So today, we know that the men are there. So this call is to reactivate those men that pledged in 95 to make their community safe and decent place. This is us calling us back to active duty to make sure that our communities remain a safe and decent place to live.
And finally, if anybody wants to get involved in this or find out more about how it's going
We're
to work.
having a meeting today, Thursday. Captain Dennis Muhammad, who is the founder of the Peacekeepers. This is an organization that's been present. Really, he got the idea following the 1 Million Man March. And so he's had a national organization for the last 13 years in various cities such as New York, Philadelphia, Louisiana, and others, where he has these peacekeepers. So we're bringing them into the city. He'll be addressing us at Muhammad Mosque number 11. That's going to be this Thursday at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock p.m. And so we're looking forward to him coming and sharing, the skills and the training that he utilizes with the peacekeepers, and we'll be bringing that initiative to Boston.